Good evening.
Hi, Sharon.
How are you?
Hello.
Hello, Sharon. Hi, George. Wayne.
Hello. How are you doing?
Bill, how are you?
I'm good.
Did you enjoy your football yesterday?
I didn't watch much football yesterday, buddy.
Wow. No interest today, eh?
Yeah, I haven't been watching. I never really did watch a whole lot of pro, to be honest with you. I always enjoyed college better. But
Okay.
Wayne's happy though. His team won.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, now I know why he's asking. Who's that?
Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
See, now when we were playing high school ball, I didn't let that cat out of the hat because they weren't worth a shit.
Keep in mind we're recording, although we haven't officially started.
Okay.
And I knew that.
I always slip, so now I'm so conscious of it.
Uh-oh, Taiwan. That will be the next conflict.
Yep.
That should be interesting. Hey, how about the lawsuit that was filed?
What?
How about the lawsuit that was?
Good evening, everyone. It's exactly 4:30.
Good evening.
How are you?
Doing good, and yourself?
I'm wonderful.
Hi, everyone.
Do we have an agenda? Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to say Happy New Year. I think this is the first time that the policy committee is meeting in the new year. We've done some amazing work this past year and just looking forward to moving forward in 2021.
Sounds good.
At this time, can we call the meeting to order and recite the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
United States of America
and to
and to
the
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
January 20th.
Okay, George Andrews.
Here.
Okay, Sharon Glasgow.
Here.
Okay, Debbie Kulik, is she here? I don't see Debbie on, so I believe she's absent. And Wayne Roner?
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A recommendation to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes from the December 21st meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Included in your packets this evening for your review is the PSBA Policy News Network Newsletter Volume 7, 2020. This issue of the Policy News Network addresses policies affected by Act 110 of 2020 related to students convicted or agitated of sexual assault. This issue also includes a year in review to enable members to quickly see the policies that were either newly developed or revised this year. We'll discuss the following policies this evening. Policy 103, Title 9, Sexual Discrimination Affecting Students. The PSBA revisions are inclusive, as we just talked about, as a result of provisions of Act 110 of 2020. Let's take a minute and look at that and see if there's any discussion. I did have a chance to review prior to tonight's meeting.
I didn't see anything when I reviewed it before.
Sharon,
I
I would just add, this policy, as you know, can note on top, was approved by the committee and the board back in August of 2020. And that new section on page 3 in red is really the
Oh, yeah.
substantial change to what was already approved back in August as a result of Act 110.
Understood. I had no comments.
I had no problem with any of it. Yeah, it was just the addition. Billy said it was just the addition.
Can we go back to the agenda momentarily and then move on to the next policy, please? Next, we'll be discussing policy 218.3, discipline of student convicted and agitated of sexual assault. Again, this policy provisions as a result of Act 110, 2020. Can we look at policy 218.3, please?
And Sharon, just so you know, this is an entirely new policy, 218.3.
Correct.
So we took the exact language from PSBA for this section, for this policy.
So let's make sure we give this policy its due diligence as a result of it being new.
I'm afraid to ask.
Well,
We don't have any issues right currently or recently with respect to students and discipline for these types of actions, do we?
No, sir.
Thank you.
And if I could just comment, it's Eric, just to be clear, although it's a new policy, not to be confused with the one that was previously on the books by the same number, which is simply going to be shifted up to 0.4. So no change to the other policy, but it will be renumbered to keep us in line with PSBA.
Sure.
okay.
Thank you. Can you scroll down just a little bit? Are we all there? If you could scroll down just a little bit more, if we're all at the same space. I do. Can you scroll down a little bit? While we're perusing through this policy,
And when I read it, I didn't see any problems with it at all. It's,
and you know what I was looking for in terms of, how would the board be notified if there was an incident, if you will? Is that confidential? How would we know?
well, if it was expulsion, Billy, am I right? If it's expulsion,
Yeah.
it goes to a panel, which has a couple board members on it, and then it goes to the whole board for finalization.
That's correct.
Okay, so we haven't experienced that yet other than this year. Okay. Can you scroll down just a little bit more?
We did experience something a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think it was a transfer from Georgia or something. Ron Bradley was in it.
And on to the last page, page 3 of this policy, please. Are there any other questions regarding this policy?
No.
Can we go back to the agenda? Review the title of policy number 314, physical examination, updated language as a result of a repeal, 414 and 415.
We did it for all employees instead of just administrative. And we just changed some of the language from what I can see here. And from medical examination, we said physical examination.
Now on this one here, we will also be repealing the other sections. So we're consolidating again, this all into one policy and incorporating some of the new language from PSBA with regard to health monitoring due to COVID.
And that's what I understand as I continue to read through. Can you continue to move down just a little bit? I think it's
The biggest change is the guideline section, is it not?
right. Can you scroll down just a little bit more? And I'm praying that we're all moving forward at the same speed. But I'm interested in just taking a closer look at the communicable diseases portion as a result of COVID. So we could pay special attention to that section.
Which section are you looking at?
Guidance, it's in front of you on your screen. It's titled Health Monitoring and Communicable Diseases.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't, when I read that before, it didn't seem that there was anything that stuck out to me that was unacceptable.
Wow, COVID is taken. Can we scroll down just a little bit more? Thank you. Any other comments regarding this policy?
No. No.
Can we go back up to the agenda just to look at the next policy that we'll be going to? Thank you, Technology Committee. The next policy we'll be looking at is 332, working periods, repeal 432 and 532. So we know that this is replacing.
So we're taking out the 330. Is it 332 or is it 432?
I think
We'll
it's
be deleting, we'll be repealing 432 and 532 will be repealed. And we'll
We're doing away
continue.
with the all the other ones, and we're just making it straight employees.
Correct.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Can you scroll down just a little bit?
And I didn't see anything out of the ordinary on that one either.
Yeah, standard. It should be very generic right out from PSBA.
Can you scroll down just a little bit more? Further, just perusing. Perfect. Any additional questions or any other comments regarding the policy in front of us?
No.
Let's move on to the next policy. You don't have to go back to the agenda. They're in order, so I can read it right off the top. We're moving on to employees regarding sick leave. You know, we had discussion about this in our last meeting. And I think we were talking about who were the eligible employees, whether they were the teachers or the
Was it 10, was
support
it 10
staff
months?
or the, you know, security who falls up under that. I just want to see where we offered a little more clarity.
There's nothing
Can
on
you
this.
scroll down just a little bit, unless there are any questions on that first?
No.
I do have a question. Under guidelines, that second paragraph, particularly the last sentence, when it says a sick leave day once commenced may be reinstated as a working day only with the approval of the superintendent. Is that so, or should it be the hierarchy of the building? Like, does that really go to Riker's desk?
I can say, Sharon, I've never had one of those come to my desk, but my interpretation of that is that should someone have called in a sick leave and then decided they were able to come to work, we would remove their sick leave from their use and reinstate them as a working day.
So should that be under superintendent or his designee or human resources? Does that need to go to you, or does that need to go to who keeps the attendance for the the employees?
The leads.
All the attendance is done in the ESOP program, so the principals would be able to see that as well. So you can add that. I mean, there's no harm in extending that to, I don't see any harm in extending that to the building administrator or director of human resources.
Unless they're reporting to you, but I just wouldn't think
Right.
that, you know, you don't want to get bogged down with, you know, the little, not that it's little, but.
Typically, what would happen in a situation like that, if it were to occur, and like Dr. Riker, I've never heard of that happening, payroll secretaries at the building level or the principal would communicate with myself. I then typically have to provide the communication to our payroll department, because they are the individuals that would be responsible for making any adjustments to accrued time, but they would not do that without my authorization or that of Dr. Riker's.
So,
And so if that rescind happens, you know, and they don't need the day or whatever, I would say,
we should have Steve in there then, or the human resources.
right, you know, by approval of the HR department.
Yeah, human resources or like George, I think you said even designee.
Yeah, designee, yeah.
By,
Okay, I will be sure to add that.
okay, so it would be a building designee or human resources?
I don't think it would lie with a building designee.
Okay.
I'm just saying in addition to the superintendent or designee that the superintendent would declare.
Is that clear for you?
Wayne has a question.
Yeah, it's clear to me. I do have a question. It sounds like our employees log into some kind of computer program that notes that they're working every day or a particular day. Kind of systems in place?
I think more so the absence of.
Yeah, we utilize it. Its acronym is ESOP, and employees would only access an input if they need to take a day of absence. Okay. In which case that information is then pulled each morning by the building or the department payroll secretary, so that if they have to make necessary arrangements for coverages and substitutes, they're able to do so.
All right.
Thank you, clear and understood. Can we move a little further down on this document? I have no questions there. If anyone else does, a little further, please. Any other questions regarding
No,
leave? Can we move to the next policy, please? And
Sharon, this policy here was the one that we had at last month's meeting where we just needed to reword the last paragraph of page 1.
can we go to the
Take
last
a look
paragraph,
down
please?
a little.
now, on the
Under
regular,
period of leave. Mhm.
on the regular meeting tonight, was it 339 or 336 that we were talking about? For the individual.
I remember, I recall this. What was your question, George? I apologize.
On the regular meeting, was it 339 or 336?
For the previous policy,
No, 336.1, okay, it wasn't. They're asking to make the change on the board agenda on 336, which is what we, point 1, and I don't have that, which is,
can we go to the top of this policy just to review the nomenclature, the number?
This is 339 though.
Okay.
can we go back to 336? Is that the one before?
336 isn't on tonight's agenda.
Yes, on tonight's, okay, yeah, okay. Should we have talked about that here, Billy, or it's not, or we can do it the
Well,
other?
if it's not on the agenda at this point, it's not up for discussion. If there's a recommendation to bring it, we can go through that later.
Doesn't make any difference to me.
Yeah, let's just stay focused on where we are. And it looks like the only change was on that last paragraph. Can we go back down to that? And I remember the discussion, just to be a little more clear and specific, and add some parameters for 90 days, and there would be some type of assessment at that point. Can you scroll? Let's give
No,
everyone a chance.
discussed the last time, yeah.
I had no further questions. Are there any other questions regarding the leave policy for employees or unpaid leave?
No.
Can we move forward to the next policy, please? Policy number. What is the policy number here? Is it 4340? Is it 440? Is it 440?
It's
It will
340.
now become 340.
Okay.
It was,
thank you.
we had 440 and now we're combining those two into one again and adding some new language from PSBA.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's basically saying that adult has to be responsible for kids at all times.
Can you scroll down a little? Further, please. Can you scroll down, please? Are there any other questions regarding the policy in front of us,
Nope.
the welfare of our students?
Okay, I see an issue arising with this policy.
Tell us where to go so we can follow you.
Probably more prevalent for North students than it is for South students. A staff member may not transport students in a personal vehicle except where specifically permitted by the building principal or designee. So with respect to extracurricular activities, I know that specifically with North High School football, on all levels, not just varsity, I know that coaches and volunteers are transporting students simply because they don't have a ride because their parents are commuters. So what's the intent with the school district on this particular line item in this policy? What are we saying to our community then?
Well, this has been in the policy though for at least 15, 20 years, that you don't want the teachers by themselves. They have to, if I'm right, Billy, you have to have two teachers with the student when you're driving, so that you don't have any issue. She said, he said, because we had this back when my kids were in school, when they were doing a concert out in Frackville. And we actually, as parents, brought the kid home because the teacher would have to leave her car there, go with the other teacher, and then they have to go back and get it. It's a safety issue. It's a safety issue. I think it's a good issue, and I can see why they do it. It's to protect the teacher as well as the coach, as well as it is to protect the student.
Well,
George, you're right. And it's also a liability issue that we don't want the teacher or the coach to put themselves in a liable situation.
Okay, but the point is, this is occurring every day of every school year for as long as I listen. The North has opened up in 2000. I've been heavily involved since 2006. So I'm well aware of the dynamics of what's going on. So I'm bringing this up because I want to know how we're going to enforce this moving forward without hindering our student athletes that have issues with rides.
Wayne, I think the red text there gives you that when it says, except where specifically permitted by the building principal or designee.
I understand what you're saying. I'm drawing out conversation.
Yeah.
Because not for nothing, I'm well versed in my community.
I can speak to that for previous circumstances. To what Wayne has pointed out, there absolutely has been occasions where parents know of a conflict or inability to be able to get their child, and we've asked for notes to be provided and sent in, and then we verify with them. We make sure, in this case, if it's athletics, we make sure obviously that the athletic director, the coach is aware. I've seen it on occurrence for spring production, those areas as well. And we recommend getting a parent note so that we're able to have that dialogue and verify things.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm cool with it. I just want to make sure that, I don't want to be stiff arming those that are having difficulties. I have no problem providing transportation.
Steve, since you do that, should we make that part of this policy? That if the parents, if they have to do it, the parents have to provide a note?
The only thing I'd say is I don't know if you necessarily want to open it up. We don't want to necessarily promote our staff members to be susceptible or responsible for such, because like Dr. Riker pointed out, it is a little bit of a liability. And George, as you spoke to, we don't necessarily want them to end up in compromising situations if they don't need to be. I think for the occasions that have come up, at least I can only speak to my own experiences. They are, real situations. They're not an everyday thing. It's a one and done, and those things have been handled, through, like I said, communication and documentation.
I have no problem with it.
Me either, as long as someone's notified. And things could even happen on an emergency basis. But as long as they have a process to communicate it, text it, let the building principal know that they're taking home John, and you're safe.
The
I'm
issue,
fine with that.
the issue occurred when the parent didn't show up for the concert, and the teachers were left there holding the bag because there was no communication at all. That's what happened in our case. And we took the kid home, but that's what you hope, that the parents and the teachers all communicate with each other and you get over those type of things.
Right. Or the kid's social circle can provide. But I think the policy as it's written does mention notification. So at least we have a process in place, or there's understood communication. And I hope that those coaches and or teachers that do once in a while end up doing that transporting, in case, however it comes about, that they're just following the policy. So we might just want to highlight that one if we can in our next opportunity to do a spotlight on a policy, and just add additional verbiage as to the why behind it. Is there any further discussion on this particular policy?
No.
And I think this is the last policy. At this time, we'd like to open the floor for public participation. Keep in mind, limited to 3 minutes. Please raise your hand at the bottom of the screen if you're here with us. Seeing none. Let's continue to move forward. A motion to authorize and direct the administration to post the following items with noted revisions for public review during the month of January and subsequent board action in February.
So moved.
Second.
So
Perfect.
we're moving all 7 policies, A through G forward, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. George and Wayne.
A to G.
Mhm.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. See you shortly.
Thank you.
Take care. Yep. In a few minutes.
Thank you.